Joining us now, though, one of the best Democratic political consultants of all time. You can follow him at Not Larry Sabato with us. And Ben Tribbett just had a scathing piece on saying that the Democratic National Party system is rigged by, well, Debbie two names, Debbie Wasserman Schultz and others. And he'll also be with us. Ben, you're the first to know this. You've been invited to 2 roundtables next week, Ben. June 8th at Chap Peterson World Headquarters. The boys are back in town. We'll be in Fairfax City at Chap's place. Ben hopefully will be there. Chap Peterson, Scott Suravel, David Marston, The Godfather, maybe Tom Davis, all in Chap Peterson's office. And we always get a big audience for that. Then the following day, Ben, we got to give equal time. So we're going to have the Republican Roundtable at Pete Snyder World Headquarters. And you're invited to that as well. Guest list coming for that. That's by where you live also. You know where that is, at Disruptor Capital. Ben, good to have you, man.
Good morning, John.
So put the 8th and the 9th on your calendar.
All right.
I know you're going to be there. You had a piece the other day. You don't do a lot of pieces these days, but I thought it was a blockbuster piece, and you were airing your frustration about how the Democratic National Committee, in getting committee members, the system is rigged. Can you elaborate on that for our audience?
Well, sure. And this is a Virginia-specific issue because it's the Virginia Democratic Party that's responsible for electing our members of the Democratic National Committee. So I can't speak to how the other 49 states do their system and whether or not they're run fairly or not. But we've had the last 2 or 3 cycles, and it happens every 4 years, where the results have been rigged for the National Committee in the way that the process is set up, so that people that want to run for that position are really unable to get a fair shake at running for it. And, at the last convention, the official candidates from the party slate, actually lost the election, and were supposed to go into a runoff against the other candidates. And I should disclose, John, I was one of the people who ran that cycle, and the party held the results for over 3 hours, refused to announce the results, refused to hold the runoff election until 5 minutes before their space. They had to leave the space where the convention was being held, and then immediately proceeded to a voice vote to elect their candidates, and then moved on. So it's a very rigged process. I found even the last time when we tried to appeal the process that the person who we had to appeal to at the National Committee was actually Susan Swecker, who then immediately just denied the appeal and refused to even let it have a hearing at the National Committee. And she is now the chair of the Democratic Party of Virginia. So this year, I'm not a candidate, but we're seeing this happen once again, because the party rules clearly indicate you have to advertise in advance if you're going to have a slate on the ballot through the call to convention. That's what the party plan says. And the party is planning to move forward allowing slates on the ballot, even though they did not advertise it in the call. The party plan is extremely clear. It says you shall put it in if you want to have a slate, and then it even ends with a sentence that explains the reason for this is so that everyone who's participating knows the rules. The thing could not be more clear and open and shut, and the party's just ignoring it. And what I see happening again is when this gets appealed, it'll just get denied. No one will even give it a hearing of that they're violating their own rules, and it rigs the entire results against people that are interested in grassroots candidates. This year there's 4 or 5 really good grassroots candidates, and they're not going to be able to run for the National Committee. Now, why is this important? Well, we're seeing this year for the Democrats, and this is different than the Republicans, these are the superdelegates 4 years from now. So the superdelegates at this convention were the ones elected 4 years ago. And as we know, the superdelegates is what's going to make the difference to make Hillary Clinton the nominee this year. And the same thing applies for 4 years from now. whoever's elected at this convention will be convention, and I think is a big problem when the process is rigged for something as important as the superdelegates from our state.
All right, so let's break this down so our audience understands the inside baseball. So there is a Virginia Democratic Party convention is June 18th. It's in Richmond. That night is the JJ dinner. By the way, we'll be there for the convention. Then we'll be live on the air 6 to 9 p.m. for the JJ dinner. Hopefully we'll have you there with us on air like you always are. But when you say they put a slate together, what exactly are these positions?
The positions are the members of the Democratic National Committee. So Virginia has 5 members of the Democratic National Committee that are elected at the convention.
So are these committee members or are these national delegates?
These are the national committee members, which makes them super delegates.
For 2020, not 2016.
That's right.
Okay, so, and how many of them are there?
There's 5 of them.
So 5 of them. So what you're saying is the Democratic Party of Virginia has pre-selected a slate of 5, right? That they want in, and then other people obviously are able to go to that convention and run themselves. But what you're saying is the Democratic Party of Virginia has not advertised ahead of time who the slate is, so they just kind of go in, they've got their slate put together, and they try to rig it.
No, actually, John, it's what it is that they've advertised who's on it. They're required under the party rules to advertise to the public that there will be a slate. And so when they do this thing called the call to convention, which generally happens about 2 months before the convention, it's something that they're required to advertise that tells people, here's the business that this Democratic Party convention will take up, so that the public is aware. And the party plan says you must, in that advertisement, tell people, if you're going to allow slates, that you're going to allow it. And what a slate is it's something that appears on the ballot. So you actually, it's not something where, we're not talking about a loose slate where people just pass out a flyer that says, please vote for these 5 people.
Right.
We're talking about actually a thing on the ballot where you mark it and you don't have to vote for anyone, so that they can bring people to the convention that don't know any of the candidates and will just check that box, and I voted for the slate. Now, in the past, oftentimes the parties refuse to even count the votes because they've just stacked up the ballots and the slate wins so easily that they don't even count the rest of the votes. The last convention, the slate went down, and then the party just refused to even recognize the results.
So what you're saying is in the last convention, they had a slate go through. The slate actually got beat, but then they rigged the results in such a way that the slate won anyway. So who is it that participates? I mean, who is it that actually is eligible in the upcoming Democratic Party of Virginia convention in 2 weeks in Richmond? Who is actually eligible in there to vote?
All the delegates, and the delegates to the state convention were elected about a month ago. They had to sign up in advance, and then there were caucuses held. The delegates were divided up by the performance in each congressional district by Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, and you had to sign up for one or the other. And then if there were too many signed up for your candidate, there were elections held. So, the convention is about 65% Hillary Clinton because she won the state overwhelmingly in the primary.
Right. So is this like the Republican conventions where you pre-file as a delegate, but you're saying the difference is you're filing as a delegate backing one of the presidential candidates?
That's right.
So then you become eligible, you become a delegate to the Democratic Party of Virginia convention, June 18th in Richmond. You show up, and then one of the party's business is you're voting for 5 Democratic National Committee members from Virginia who will be super delegates in 2020.
That's right.
So that's like a big deal, right?
It's a very big deal. And they're also your members of the National Committee. So, for example, the Republicans, I think, just had a massive fight at their state convention between Mark Obenshain's wife and Cynthia Dunbar.
Right.
For the National Committee woman, because it's a very prestigious position. Mm-hmm. But I think I tweeted after that happened, well, at least the Republicans actually had an election and stood by it. And the great example of, what went on at the last convention was, if in the Republican Party, when Mark Obenshain's wife lost this convention, believe me, that's not what the party poobahs wanted, right?
Right.
But they did recognize the results, and they seated the other person.
Right.
At the Democratic convention last time, they didn't like the results, so they just refused to recognize the results and proceeded to a voice vote.
So for the opposition, are there 5 or more independent candidates running for these 5 Democratic National Committee slots?
Well, it's not. Yes, I think there are. It's interesting because right now there's discussion of whether or not they haven't announced the final slate. They don't have to yet, and so it's not clear whether they're planning to slate 4 of the 5 slots and allow 1 to be open for someone else to win, or whether they're going to slate all 5. In the past, they've slated them all. This time, because of pressure, they may only slate 4 or 5. But even that, John, isn't really fair if you slate 4 or 5 and then tell everyone else, well, if you can run for 1 seat.
So then you have a whole litany of people that are not on the slate running for 1 seat. That doesn't seem fair.
No. And in this case, the slate, as I said in the column, the slate's actually illegal. They did not advertise it correctly. And, if they were going to follow their own rules, they need to just take the slate off the ballot and let everyone run. And if they want to have a slate next time, they need to follow the rules correctly. But I don't think they will do that because they don't like to follow their own rules.
If I'm a legitimate Democrat delegate going to the convention on June 18th in Richmond, I'm going to get a ballot. And on that ballot, it'll have the names of independent, unaffiliated Democrats running for one of the 5 seats for the Democratic National Committee for Virginia. And then on the bottom of the ballot or the top of the ballot, it'll just have something that says what? Slate?
The slate.
Slate. No names.
For the slate, you don't have to have names. You just check the slate box.
So it just says slate.
Yep.
So I'm just voting blindly for whatever the party leadership has predetermined. I don't even know these people's names.
Well, here's the best part. Actually, the slate people are also listed on that day on the ballot, so you can vote for them twice. Now, the same person can't. So you can, on the slate members, you can check the box and vote for them. Or if you want to cast individual votes for them because you want to split your ballot half slate, half not, you can do that also. So it gives them an incredibly huge advantage of vote totals.
And so if I'm John Fredericks and I'm part of the slate for the Democratic Party of Virginia to be a DNC, to go to the National Committee, man, I can actually get voted for 2 times. You can vote the slate, and then you can vote for me, and I get 2 votes.
No. You can only one of those counts.
So I can either vote for the slate or somebody can vote for me, but I've got 2 opportunities.
Right, 2 opportunities.
To get your vote on that ballot.
That's right.
And my name isn't part of the slate, so I don't even know who those slate people are. This is incredible. This is like the way the Politburo ran.
Right. It's a problem, and slates have been legal in the Democratic Party of Virginia since 1996, and it creates. I'll tell you what it really does. It creates a lot of hard feelings for positions whenever they're done in any position because new people show up. And then they're told there's a slate and they can't win. And then they're not allowed to participate. They're not allowed to do whatever they're running for to do. They're not given a fair shake. Then they generally don't come back. And so that's why, the Democratic Party of Virginia has so much trouble getting new people to participate because they come to their district conventions. Say you're electing delegates to the national convention at your, congressional district conventions. If you show up and there's a slate to be the national delegates, you're not even given a fair shake to run. And then, people get disgusted. They don't want to come back. So it's a big problem. It's something that I think that you'll see a lot of action on the floor about this year. I think people are fed up and tired of it.
Are you able?
So it will be interesting to see how the party leadership handles that. I'm looking forward to your show. I'll definitely come on.
Are you able, in the convention in Richmond, are you able to bring a motion from the floor to challenge this?
Probably, but the question is whether or not they'll even recognize it.
And
you can't bring a motion unless someone calls on you, and so that's going to be the challenge.
Well, I've been there, done that, and so I get that. Whoever has that gavel rules. Who is chairing the convention? Is that Susan Swecker?
That's right.
So basically, if Ben Tribbett brings a motion to challenge this and you're not recognized, she hits the gavel, I mean, it's over.
Basically, I mean, that's going to be the problem. But I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be there. The interesting part of this convention is, and you've seen this at other state conventions, the Bernie Sanders crowd causes a big ruckus to begin with. And so, if Susan doesn't recognize people and let them, operate in this convention, I think that you're going to see total chaos.
Ben, at this convention, you mentioned something that I thought was fascinating. You said this is going to be a little different because, 35% of the delegates that are there are going to be Bernie Sanders delegates. And if you look at past history, they're not people to sit on their hands. They want to be active. They want to get involved. They're going to see this system as just another rigging. Isn't that going to put pressure on the Democratic Party of Virginia leaders like Susan Swecker, the chairman, who will chair the convention, to recognize on the floor their concerns?
I hope so, John. I mean, but I think that, past experience of these conventions has been, it doesn't matter who is wanting to be recognized on the floor. It doesn't matter if it's an elected official, a member of the General Assembly, a local elected official. They're determined to push through and not recognize anyone. So it's a really interesting split that's going to go on this year because, as you said, with the Bernie Sanders delegates, you saw what happened in Nevada.
Right.
Things got out of control. And we don't know how things will get here in Richmond because we need to see how the party handles it. But I agree with you that I think that a lot of those delegates are going to look at the system as being very rigged. And I'll tell you that there's a number of us who have signed up as Hillary Clinton delegates who are not pleased with the party leadership either. So this is going to be a tough slog for them if they actually count the votes. But as I said 4 years ago, they didn't recognize the results of the votes, so that may not even matter.
Now, you're going as a Hillary Clinton delegate, right?
That's right.
Okay, and you ran for one of the DNC committee spots in 2012. Why did you decide not to run in 2016?
I think that I made my point. I think that, like I said, the process was so rigged last time. It's not worth spending another few months of my time to go through another rigged process.
Well, we'll see what plays out. I think, there's a lot of frustration. But let me just ask you this. When you think of the Democratic Party, you think, they want young people in, they want new people. What is the objective here of the Democratic Party of Virginia rigging the process to get their 5 people in? Why don't they just open it up to the floor and let everybody run and, make their speeches and shake hands and run kind of a campaign like Ann and I did? I mean, we ran a campaign, raised money, worked hard in order to be elected national delegates. So did our partner, Robert Ike. Why not just open it up? What's their objective here? What are they afraid of?
I think that what's going on here is that they want to elect their friends, and that's really all that matters in these conventions. And I think that from having seen the Republican convention. It really all comes down to you want to elect your friends, and
right.
In this case, the party leadership is pretty old. I mean, their friends all look like they could be in a Depends commercial together, and that's who they want to elect.
That's a low blow. Now, remember, Ben, I'm 58, so we can't make fun of the old people, but yes, they do look like they'd be in that commercial. I'm not going to argue with that. That's true.
Susan Swecker, maybe she should invite them down into a sponsorship deal at the convention.
Okay, look, it should get opened up. And, as bad as some of the Republican shenanigans that go on, I think what you're seeing, what you've explained in this Democratic convention coming up, it's just not right, especially because they didn't even follow the rules. We had a fight in the Republican convention on the floor this past, whatever it was, the end of April in Harrisonburg. And one of those fights was there was a guy, Vince Haley, that wanted to run for chairman and then dropped out and then wanted to get back in. And Whitbeck, the chairman, basically said, sorry, that's not the rules. Once you send an email and you drop out, you're out. That's it. End of game. We're going to follow the rules. So at least they did do that. Sounds like Susan Swecker has to really think this through because, as I said, I don't think these Bernie Sanders people are going to go in there and sit on their hands because, look, they're frustrated now. I mean, if you look at your whole nominating process, and I've been saying this for a couple of weeks, There's no winner-take-all states. There's no mainly winner-take-all states. It's all on a proportional basis. So basically the way it's set up, if you've got 2 or 3 candidates in, everybody's going to get a certain percentage, and then the superdelegates are going to decide almost 100% of the time.
Well,
for instance, let's say the California primary coming up, which has, I think, 550 delegates. If that was winner-take-all and Bernie Sanders wins, he's actually back in the hunt. But even if he wins, he'll get 280, Clinton will get 270. And so it's the superdelegates who decide, where at least on the Republican side, you don't have the superdelegates. And you've got winner-take-all primaries where a Trump can come in and win New York, win Florida, win Indiana, and then he wins, right? The Democrats don't have that same process.
No, that's exactly right. And I think that the democratic process is really broken nationally. But, on a local level, there's good reason for some of these superdelegates, because you don't want to have a U.S. senator running against people at a district convention to go to the national convention. That's what Republicans force them to do, and I think I think it minimizes your ability to run as a grassroots candidate if you have a elected official in your area that wants to do it. But at the same time, these superdelegates are really deciding the convention, because everything's proportional leading up to it, and it's very hard to win without the superdelegates. So
exactly.
We've seen the last 2 conventions where neither candidate could get enough delegates without superdelegates to win the nomination. And that's because there's so many superdelegates that to win the nomination without them would require, 62, 63% of the delegates? It's almost impossible.
Well, it is in a system where the delegates through primaries and caucuses are elected in a proportional basis. Therefore, it's almost set up where the superdelegates are almost always going to decide what happens. And, Bernie Sanders, his comment the other day, he does make sense when he said that 90% of Hillary Clinton's superdelegates made their commitment before a single primary vote was ever cast. Some of them as far as 8 months ahead of Iowa. That really seems like it's the party it's the party operatives, the leaders basically deciding ahead of time who their nominee is going to be. And I don't think that feels good to some people. Certainly, if that was the way the Republican Party worked, there's no way that Donald Trump would be going to Cleveland as a presumptive nominee. Would not happen. It just wouldn't happen. If they had the same exact process, it wouldn't happen. There was no way that he could win. And so I
think if you make that case, John, then they probably will enhance support for superdelegates, because I don't think the Democrats want him to be the candidate either.
Well, if you get back to the genesis,
it is unfair, and I understand what you're saying about the fairness. You can't have a system that doesn't allow your voters to make the selection.
It's almost like the Democratic primaries are for show. It's almost like professional wrestling. The winner is already decided, and you just put on a show and have a beer, basically. And, the genesis of this was 1972. After McGovern got the nomination, the Democratic Party leaders got together and said, we have to find a way to stop this, basically stop insurgents from coming in and taking over, right?
That's right, and I think that I have to tell you, and I've written about this before, the Republican Party of Virginia actually has more fair rules than the Democratic Party of Virginia. It hasn't led to any success for them, and I think that's part of the case that the Democratic Party leadership will make, is say, this doesn't matter when you get to the elections. People don't care if our process is rigged, and so far the results bear that out.
Well, they do. That would be the argument. That would be winning is everything argument. But, having gone through this myself and seeing our ticket win for national delegate in my 4th district, and having seen what we went through to do that, because we were total outsiders and we were also early for Trump, and we thought everybody was going to gang up on us. And so nobody gave us a shot to win. However, the process was such that we could wage a campaign, raise money, have rallies, sign people up, go to the convention. We had a fabulous operation, and we were able to overcome all the obstacles and win. If it was the other side of the aisle, I would not have been able to do that. I think that's, to me, is the difference. Let's get to some predictions. I'm going to go to the Republican side. 2nd District, big battle, June 14th. Scott Taylor, Randy Forbes, Pat Cardwell. Make a prediction.
I haven't followed it close enough, John, to make a good prediction. But from what I've seen, I think that Randy Forbes is in serious trouble in this one.
Why?
I don't think that he has a base of support in Virginia Beach that he does in his own congressional district. And so running over there, I just don't think that he has the brand loyalty. He has a lot of issues that he's worked on that are very good for that area, and he's obviously highlighting them. But I don't think that he has the brand loyalty in Virginia Beach. And so I think this is going to be very, very competitive.
Well, he's going to lose the beach. I don't think there's any doubt there. And I think Taylor's going to win the beach handily. The question is, Forbes should do very well in the new areas of the 2nd District, especially on the peninsula area. The question is that going to be enough? Let's get to Democratic candidates. Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax throwing his hat in the ring. I've got him as the overwhelming favorite. There's only a couple other candidates out there. Gene Rossi, I think he's a district attorney in Northern Virginia, is going to announce his candidacy. Probably Delegate Eileen Filler-Corn. But the problem here, Ben, is as good as a general election candidate as I think Eileen would be. She's very, very conservative. I don't mean politically conservative. Conservative in her actions. She's not a risk taker. I just don't see her being able to mount a serious statewide campaign to beat Justin. What say you?
I think that Eileen has a built-in state network for her time working for Governor Kane and for Senator Warner. Actually, I take it back. It was Governor Kane and Governor Warner that she worked for them both when they were governors. That is going to help her a lot in a statewide race. So, this is Mark Herring who almost lost to Justin Fairfax, was not the strongest statewide candidate. He barely got through that primary. I think Eileen starts out on paper as a stronger statewide candidate than Mark Herring in the beginning because she actually has a statewide network that Herring didn't have. So Fairfax will be stronger than he was 4 years ago because it's his second run. Eileen, I think, will also be stronger than Mark Herring was. I think this is going to be a competitive race.
All right, we'll see how it plays out. I've got Justin Fairfax going in here as a big favorite. He's already run a statewide race. You know how tough that is, especially in Virginia. It's so big, and you got to go to so many different areas. And the guy's a tireless worker. I think he's going to be tough to beat. And, also, again, I look at Eileen, and when you look at a lot of what she's done in the House, she takes on very safe positions. I mean, is that really going to play?
Yeah, I don't think that positions are going to have any sort of role in this. I think that in a primary, people like all the candidates, and then they go through their gut of who they think will be the stronger candidate and who they identify more with. Eileen will benefit from the fact that 60% of Democratic primary voters are women. That's going to be her big benefit.
Yeah, that will help her. Well, we're expecting her to make a decision. I think she's already made one. We'll be expecting her to make an official decision pretty soon. Let's go to the governor's race on the Democratic side. One candidate still. I heard a few rumors that Jim Moran might get in the race, so we reached out to him, didn't get a response back.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, John. I actually ran into Jim Moran 2 nights ago and brought it up with him and asked him.
What do you say?
And I think I can break this news on your show. He has absolutely zero interest.
Zero.
So he will not be a candidate.
So he's not going to be a candidate. So that really leaves only Ralph, right?
Only Ralph.
No other candidates. He could be the presumptive nominee. Let's go to the Republican side. I've only got a minute and a half. 3 candidates in right now. Ed Gillespie, Rob Whitman, Corey Stewart. I still expect Pete Snyder to get in the race. It is going to be a convention in May of 2017. What do you see?
I think when you talk about the favorite, you've got to say it's Corey Stewart because the momentum he's going to have after Trump is elected president, is going to be pretty hard to stop in the Republican Party. I'm half kidding, John.
Well, you know what? But if Trump wins, he is most likely going to come to Virginia, and he's going to do a couple of fundraisers for Corey Stewart, and he's going to most likely endorse Corey Stewart for governor. So I think if Trump wins, Stewart's in play. The Trump people are very loyal, who would stand up for him. So I think if Trump wins, that puts him in play. But all the smart money is on Gillespie. I mean,
sure.
All of it. All of it. How does Whitman win?
Whitman, I think, probably loves the fact that Pete Snyder's thinking about running because the reason that he was elected to Congress to begin with was a crowded field where he just was the least offensive candidate. And so Whitman probably wants Pete to run and a couple others to run and just keep this thing going and try to stay alive and try the same strategy that he had when he ran for Congress. I think on the first ballot in his congressional race, there were 12 candidates and he finished fifth.
No,
and
he was
then
eighth.
They just eliminated one by one.
He was eighth.
Rob just slowly moved up.
Yeah, he did. Hey, we're out of time. If Pete Snyder gets in, all bets are off. I think Snyder is going to be a very tough candidate. This is the John Fredericks Radio Network.